I would like to welcome you all to this webinar on Assembly Bill 1775, also known as AB 1775, the California Cannabis Events and Lounges Act, hosted by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation. My name is Dale Skye Jones, and I am the Chancellor and CEO of Oaksterdam University, the longest running training for the cannabis industry in the world, and I'm excited to be your moderator today. We are here because the Department of Cannabis Regulation has provided the Business Licensing and Compliance Assistance, or BLC program, to assist equity entrepreneurs in the city of Los Angeles with obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful cannabis business. Please visit cannabis.lacity.gov for more announcements on the ever-improving and expanding BLC program, such as additional live webinars with different subjects and experts, checklists, worksheets, and other management tools that you can download and use, as well as links for accessing expert consultants in the BLC coaching program. This connects you with seasoned cannabis subject matter experts, and we'll drop the link in the chat shortly to sign up for these coaching services. Also, you will find a learning management system, an LMS, which is a self-directed or self-paced online education on important topics related to running a successful cannabis business through the BLC LMS. And as part of the city's social equity program, DCR has launched this BLC portal, the LMS portal, where you can access recorded webinars like this one, all your online courses and digital resources. This is especially for social equity applicants and licensees, and I highly recommend that you look into these courses and explore this LMS if you've not done so already. So briefly, some housekeeping rules. Please note the webinar is being recorded and can be viewed after the editing process on DCR's website and the LMS I just mentioned. You will be muted, cameras off, for the duration of the webinar. This means your camera and audio will not be available, although I'm hoping you can see and hear all the experts. There is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or commenting on the information. And please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum. Please keep your questions focused on today's topic and ask those questions in the Q&A box. You should find it right at the bottom of your panel. If you are on a cell phone or smartphone, you may find it next to those three dots, and you can expand your options. We're gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we will have opportunity to answer those questions. You are strongly encouraged to use that Q&A box so we can also answer questions by typing it out, as well as answering directly in the presentation. Finally, please note that today's content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. This information is subject to change and does not replace or supersede the Los Angeles Municipal Code nor constitute legal advice. If you have specific questions outside of today's topic or about your specific situation, please call 213-978 0738 during business hours, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4, to speak to a DCR representative. I'll be putting all this information in the chat for you. Now, it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce today's subject matter expert, Lauren Vazquez. Lauren Vazquez is the fired up lawyer. She is a cannabis attorney and social entrepreneur who has worked for over 20 years to end cannabis prohibition and advance alternatives to the failed war on drugs. Lauren has practiced cannabis law specifically since 2009 and entered private practice in 2011. She's advised numerous cannabis companies and organizations. Lauren is also the chair of Oaksterdam's legal department and previously served as the National Deputy Director of Communications for the Marijuana Policy Project. In 2016, Lauren was a senior advisor and statewide organizer for the successful Prop 64 campaign that legalized cannabis in California. She now assists cannabis businesses with licensing and regulatory compliance and enjoys helping people achieve their cannabis dreams. Welcome, Lauren, and please go ahead and begin your presentation. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Happy to have you here. Today, we are going to talk about the fun part of the cannabis industry, which is events and also cafes and lounges where we all get together and can consume and listen to music and also have commercial activities and have a good time together. So, right now, just to be clear, that the city of Los Angeles does not have event or consumption cafe or lounge licenses. You may have seen some events, but those are either held as unlicensed or maybe just right outside the city limits where they can obtain a local license. So just be aware of that right now. Those regulations are in the works. But today we're going to mostly provide an overview of the state laws and licensing requirements for events, and then how the state approaches cafes and lounges as well. So, first, we're going to cover what the DCC requires, and then we're going to make sure you understand what the new law says, and then how the local permitting process is going to play into that. DCC, Department of Cannabis Control. So, they do regulate events at the state level. So you got to get a DCC license, just like you have to get um, your retail or your cultivation or manufacturing license. And so the DCC has two event license types. And the first is for the event organizers. So this is going to be the person, the company, the business, the licensee that is going to be putting on the event. So you're going to have to get that first, and then you can apply for a temporary cannabis event. Um, Pretty much they're all just called temporary cannabis events. There isn't another kind because the events don't continue on forever. That's kind of what we're looking at with the cafes and lounges, where it's an ongoing activity. So your temporary cannabis event is just a one-time event, and you're going to need so both of those license types. And you get the event organizer license first, and then you're going to apply for the temporary license for the event. And so here are some of the rules and regulations, because um, it's there's a lot going on and a lot of people are involved, and you've got both businesses and customers. So there are, a decent amount of regulations that you need to follow for your temporary event. This is where it comes down to is on-site sales, retail sales that is allowed to be conducted, and then also the consumption, consuming on-site at the event. So temporary events, like you said, it's not about the local cafes or lounges with a you know affiliated with the retail spot. This is the bigger events that you're thinking of, like the cups, and where event tickets are being sold. So then you have maybe just an informational or an educational event that doesn't have any sales or consumption. That is not going to require any type of event license. So these are types of events that, a lot of retailers, they will just have patient resource days. They will have patient giveaway days, or just other events that let consumers and customers know, about cannabis, about their rights and whatnot. So you don't need a license to conduct those types of activities. You're good to go on sharing information. So here we got a picture from the California State Fair, which is coming up again. And they integrated cannabis into the state fair because, hey, we're an agricultural commodity. And they've also created this whole space where companies can come and do retail. And this is going to be a temporary event. So, consumption as well. If you haven't been to the state fair, I suggest you try to get to it. It is a lot of fun, and it's also becoming a big event for the cannabis industry. There's a lot of cups, you can win a lot of awards, but the state fair, that's as big as it gets. So it's really becoming a great event. It's building a lot of legitimacy and credibility for the cannabis industry. And it's putting a bottle forward for the rest of the country as well. So these events, they're more than just fun. They are all educational in their own way. So you got to get the event license before the event. So you're going to have to submit it no less than 60 calendar days, 2 months. But please, please, please do it as soon as you're ready, as soon as you know when and where you want to hold the event. Don't delay, because even in the best of times, the DCC is very busy and things happen. And they will most likely request additional information from you, just like any of the licensing processes. It's a back and forth. So make sure you do it as early as possible, because you're going to need it to be approved. And your event can be up to 4 consecutive days. So one event, 4 days straight, um, or just a single day or anything in between. So four is the max, single day. Um, that's good too. And you need to know the location, you need to know the dates, and this before you even apply. So step that's step two once you get your event organizer license. So when you are an event organizer, you're taking on quite a lot of responsibility, because even though you have licensed retailers and other licensees involved who of course are responsible for following the rules, you are ultimately going to be held responsible, and then you can face the penalties. You could have a license revoked or be denied a license in the future. So you got to make sure everybody stays in line. So this includes, maintaining the event space, keeping um, the designated areas for only that activity, making sure that there's security on site, ensuring that only 21 and up people are allowed in, checking ID. And then there is required signage that we'll go over, but you're going to have to, it's going to have to say 21 and up, this area only, so that it's very clear where the activities are allowed. And then you're going to not only have to do the application process for the license, but you're going to have to also let them know who all the other licensees are that are participating. So um, your retailers, everybody with the booth that's going to be selling any of their products, they're going to have to be listed. Other licensees as well, because other licensees are allowed to participate. So when you apply, you're going to need to provide a diagram. And like I said, whatever you put in the diagram is what you're going to be held to. So your consumption area, and then where the participants, who are the other licensees, where they're going to be set up. So I think this is an Emerald Cup. Yeah, there we go. This is the Emerald Cup layout, which was in mostly indoors in Oakland. So um, you can see it's really, really quite extensive. It's basically an architectural drawing. This one is. And yeah, like I said, you're going to be held to this requirement, this standard. So again, that's why you want to start early, because you're going to need to just figure out the layout, and who's going to be participating and what that's going to mean, like where your bigger booths are going to be, and just how you're going to lay things out. And that's pretty important, because that's part of the attendee experience. So got to think that through. And then once you get your licenses and you are allowed to have your event, the big deal is that all of the licensees, retailers, they get to sell at the event. So got to be licensed retailers. I will say, when I say retailers, I also mean micro businesses that are authorized to do retail. And the same thing when we talk about distributors. It's just that um, don't want to say retailers and micro every time. So just remember, micro retailers or micro of the same license type is allowed. So when the retailers take their products from their licensed facility, or from a licensed distributor, it's got to go through a licensed distributor. So the distributor is someone that the event organizer is going to set up. They're going to pick. They're going to Usually there's just one distributor that's going to work with everyone, or a few, but you're really going to want to be making sure that people are using distributors, and that the distributors you're working with also understand the requirements for events. So a distributor can distribute for more than one licensee, and that should bring down the cost if you want to get together with other companies. So the distributor is also responsible for returning any unsold products. Don't get to just give away things at the end of the day. Don't just get to have employees put it in the car and drive it back to the shop. It's got to be taken back to the licensed premises by the distributor. I believe that it doesn't have to be right at the end of the day when everything ends at 5 o'clock. But whatever, if the building closes at 10 o'clock, the distributor is going to need to get that. You got to get it to them so they can get it out. Um, And then you can have businesses display cannabis products. Obviously, with the retail, you're going to walk up and you're going to see, but there are some restrictions on that. You can display the products, and then again, you must always ID the customers and confirm they're 21. So, part of the standard retail regulations, these things aren't going to change just because you're at an event. And even if they were carded like on the way into the event and they got the 21 and up wristband, I would still card everyone at the register because people can slip off and share wristbands, and that's I think too risky, because we really want to make sure that minors aren't getting in. Okay. And quantities, how much can folks buy? It's pretty much the same as retailers. So you can get an ounce of flowers, 8 grams of concentrates, and 6 immature plants. And there are clones being sold at these events. It's actually one of the more popular products. People come in, get the clones ready for grow season. And so those are the adult use regulations that most retailers are familiar with. But then for the retailers that also have the medical um, license category, then the amounts are a little bit different. And it's either based on what the patient's doctor recommendation says, or 8 ounces of flower and 12 immature plants. The event regulations don't address concentrates for patients, so stick to the 8 grams of concentrates. And even if the physician's recommendation says they can have 3 pounds, don't sell them 3 pounds at the event, please. um you know don't go much higher than an ounce, actually. But use your discretion. And again, if a retailer is only adult use, they can't use these amounts. They got to stick with the normal limits. And then, okay, more restrictions. You can't give out free cannabis, no sampling, no tasting, but donations may be made to medical cannabis patients in accordance with the existing laws that allow donations. You can't give out free cannabis accessories, but you can loan them out for use, and make sure you get them back. So if you have like a little loungy area, um, and it's in the consumption area, you can or you're and the booth is in the consumption area, then you can give out cannabis accessories. Make sure you clean them if they're going to be um, used in certain ways, but um, just got to make sure you get those back, so you're not giving out free pipes, free things like that. And then you can give out your merchandise, though. You know that there are rules about merchandise for cannabis businesses, just because we have the advertising regulations, and you got to put your license number on everything. So it is okay, though, to give your merch away or to sell your merch. And it is okay to display it, but everything has to be packaged and labeled like normally. But you do get to remove it from the packaging. So this is, folks are at the booth and people want to smell it. We want to check it out. That's why we're at this event, because it's, not just your everyday cannabis. So you can remove it from the packaging, but whatever you open up, you can't sell afterwards. And then the container, it can be like, say you have a jar, it has to be with the employees, and then they need to hand it to the customer, and they have to stay with them, you know, enjoy the experience, tell them about the flowers, about the medicine, about whatever products they're selling, and then get it back. And then sell them a package, the same cannabis that's properly packaged and properly labeled. Okay. And then it's not just retailers. Want to make sure everybody knows that other cannabis licensees can participate. You could be cultivators and manufacturers and the micro version. They can participate in the events, and it's to display. If they want to purchase your products, it's going to have to go through one of the retailers. But if you're a cultivator and manufacturer, you are able to have a booth to show your products, to talk about your your farm or your facility and get the word out there about your company, and then just direct them to a retailer to be able to do that. But then it's a little bit different. You can use a distributor, or actually, in this situation, an employee can transport from the premises directly to the event with these quantities. So, if you're going as a cultivator or manufacturer, you're not necessarily bringing the full inventory that a retailer would. So, you can have employees transport smaller amounts that you intend to display. And these are the amounts you're allowed to display, so you can see why you might not necessarily need to use a distributor if you can have a few employees drive it out. Make sure you trust those employees, and that they have the appropriate vehicles for that. So same thing. You can open the packages. You can have flour out of the packages. You can show to the customers, but you gotta stay with it and get it back. And then once it's open, you can't sell it then. And then your employees make sure that they are properly identified, and so they're going to have an ID badge. Pretty basic ID badge, nothing too surprising, but it's another thing that you have to prepare for before the event. Make sure that that's ready. You're going to need to know who the employees are, because you got to put their name and whatnot. Sure, you could uh, there's it could be practical to just have your laminating machine and print them out when you're on site, but that can get hectic, and you want to make sure everybody's covered. So again, don't wait till the last minute, even though sometimes it's hard because like employee shifts change, they jump in out, things have to happen and they can't work anymore. So kind of just like a practical issue that you have to plan for. And then to get your license, you gotta meet the requirements. So really, like everything else, it comes down to the local government, and the locals are going to have to approve your event. So the local government needs to have event licensing. There isn't a restriction on the type of venue, so it could be a city-owned building, it could be a private venue. Doesn't really matter. It can be outdoors, can be indoors. That's fine with the DCC. You got to follow all the rules, and you got to make sure everything's licensed retail for sales, no alcohol or tobacco on the premises. But Lauren, why can I go to the Emerald Cup and step over here and buy beer and then come back over here? Well, often it's defined as different premises, which in some venues can easily be done and, you know, situated. Others, it's absolutely not going to be practical or even desired. We don't actually consume a lot of tobacco or alcohol in the cannabis industry. So, just no alcohol or tobacco on the premises. And then hemp is out as well. Hemp's got its whole own, realm of regulations that are all in development. And so the regulations specifically say that no hemp, sorry. And then, like I said, you got to provide the participants list. You got to post the required signage. Make sure that the 21 and up people will only be in the consumption area, nobody else. Um, and 6 a.m., if we all want to get up for a real early wake and bake, that's as early as you can start. It's very important that the consumption area is not visible to outside of the consumption area. And so, that's public streets, but also other areas of the event. So, you got the fences with the screens that are kind of um, blocking the visibility. And then no smoking where smoking isn't allowed, like indoors, obviously. 25 feet from doors or windows, or some local governments have farther distance requirements. So, don't smoke where we're not supposed to smoke. All right. So if you follow all the rules and you give them all the information, the DCC is pretty much going to license your event. But if you break the rules, and the event is happening, they can revoke the permit and they can make people leave. And this is going to be enforced by a combination of the local government, local regulators, local police, local law enforcement, as well as the DCC regulators. They're all on site at the big events. Smaller events, they might not send everybody, but both the local government and the DCC are going to be there to make sure that all the rules are followed. And there is expensive penalties if you violate it per violation. And then, yeah, again, they can revoke the permit, cancel the event, and then if they don't cancel the event, they can kick out the any people who are unlicensed. And, that's grower who shows up with his backpack and sets out a bunch of cannabis products to sell, but it's also, a retailer that maybe they set up a full booth and it looks like they're completely licensed and legitimate. They just set up a table and brought some banners. So it can be anything that is just unlicensed. And all of the individual licensees, again, they could be punished because they have their own rules to follow. So don't mess up the event. Okay. So AB 1775, that's where we get down to the lounges and the cafes. And a lot of the rules are the same as the rules for conducting the events under the DCC. So we'll get into this stuff. Okay, AB 1775, it's relatively new, just went into effect, and that's why a lot of the local regulations are still in development. Now, prior to that, we did have cafes and lounges, but this expands the activities that are allowed. It really was just you're a retailer, you can allow consumption. But we want to do a lot more than that. So, it's going to be subject to the locals, what they are going to allow and not allow. They can restrict the activity entirely. They can just say, no, we're not going to allow this. They can put whatever restrictions that they want. They can limit the number of licenses they're going to give out. They can add restrictions like sensitive use restrictions that you have to be, 1,000 feet from a school or something like that. So the city is going to be the one that develops all of those details. And there's just a statement in the regulations. It is kind of just to address a little bit of bureaucracy, but the city's going to be in charge of everything. And so certain requirements will be at the county level, like the county health department. But for this specifically, the city is going to take over that responsibility. So they're going to have their own inspection or their own requirements that mean you don't have to go through the county. We're just going to keep everything at the local city level. Less bureaucracy. Good stuff. Okay, so these are what can be allowed and what doesn't have to be allowed. So smoking, that's the big one. That's what's mostly been restricted for all of these years. We've had lounges and cafes with vaporizing. So a local government can still continue to restrict smoking and only allow vaporizing in the lounge. But you can have ingestion of infused foods or not. Um, you know, Edibles affect people differently, and it's not always predictable. There may be reasons why a city would want to regulate that. But the big changes is now you can prepare food and give out drinks. And then you can also sell tickets and have live events. So this is what we're now allowing. And so you can eat when you sit down at the lounge. You can purchase food and beverages. And that's, kind of the whole. That's the vision. That's the vision where you can go and you can hang out with your friends, consume cannabis, meet new friends, be a part of the community, enjoy an event, and see, music or anything else that artists want to contribute, and just enjoy a good time and not feel like we have to rush out because we're hungry or it's just not an environment that's good for sitting around and hanging out. And businesses, they want you to sit around and hang out, then we spend more money, right? So um, that's the main difference. And as I said, you're going to have the actual regulations for the event. It's going to be the same as the temporary events license at the state level. So you've got to limit 21 and up only in the consumption area. And this is it's 21 and up, even though medical cannabis patients don't have an age requirement under California law. It is any person with medical cannabis recommendation, and retailers obviously require a parent or guardian if anybody under 21, over 18 or 21 is coming in. Under 18 is usually a very special situation. So at these type of events, even though medical patients can purchase and can purchase in the medical uh, uh, amounts, the event consumption area is still going to be limited to only 21 and up people. And then that signage has to be posted, and you can't be visible from outside of the area. So, this is like your lounge that's permanently set up, right? This is not like an event that you're putting together and bringing everything in and taking it out. So, when you're setting up your lounge, some of this can be easy if it's inside. You can not black out the windows, but you can blur the windows. And in the outside area, you can have fencing, you can have foliage, you can dedicate more time and creativity to how you want to keep your consumption area private. And again, no alcohol or tobacco there, and no sale of the industrial hemp or hemp products, and no smoking where prohibited. And the local government, now, even if your retail facility is licensed and you meet the sensitive use distance requirements for your retail license, the local government can increase that distance requirement for a lounge or cafe, and it might mean that you're not eligible. And you're obviously stuck with where you're at because you're already licensed at that premises. So, not necessarily every retailer is going to qualify to be a lounge or cafe, because there just may be additional requirements and restrictions set up at the local level that might not work for you, unfortunately. Okay. So, because we're allowing food preparation, there are some rules about that. And primary concern is just food safety and keeping the cannabis separate from the food. We don't want anybody consuming food that has cannabis that accidentally got in there or that they didn't know about. So these, are food and health regulations. So not allowed to smoke or vaporize cannabis in the food preparation or storage areas. Stay outside in the consumption area, or these are just employees who are putting the food together. Smoking or vaporizing for employees is going to be its own rules. So no vaporizing or smoking also in the warewashing area. This is where you're going to be cleaning your utensils and where you have contact surfaces. So yeah, again, just keep the smoking or vaporizing outside of the food preparation and sanitary areas. Um, and you can see just the definitions here of what warewashing is and what a food facility is considered. So if you're even storing or preparing even um, packaged food, just make sure you keep everything safe and clean. Once again, keeping everything safe and clean so we're not commingling. This means if you're in the consumption area, one booth can't be selling the same things. And even when you're doing like your packaging and your storage or your transporting, you got everything in inventory, everything's in bins, everything needs to be kept separate. And it's just cross contamination and confusion. We don't want any mix ups. It's not pleasant to accidentally consume cannabis edibles. um, and then you could see why um, maybe a city, a local government that authorizes cafes and lounges with prepared foods that are non-cannabis foods would prohibit edibles and cannabis foods, because this is a lot, and sometimes regulators just want to keep it simple. So, um, and food and health and safety is really important. You can't have loitering outside. In this situation, it's like people are wandering on their way out and they're been there chatty for a while and they start smoking. And you've really got to keep people on the inside. And even if they're not smoking, we don't want to create any kind of nuisance. So the other nuisance that people are concerned about is smoke and smell. So the local government can require adequate ventilation and filtration systems. They may determine that existing rules cover that. They may determine that it's not necessary in certain circumstances, but that is something that they can regulate because we don't want to have secondhand smoke, and we just also don't want to be creating odors for our neighbors. And again, a lot of retailers are already using ventilation and filtration to handle that, but you're going to get checked up on again for your lounge and cafe licensing. So you got employees and they're working, and we have very strong employee protections, both at the state and federal level, and for cannabis and not cannabis. So we want to make sure that they are safe. And so, at the least, they have to be informed um, about the Department of Public Health's secondhand smoke guidance. This is a document that you can provide to them. And they just have to be aware so that they can make an informed decision that that's a job they want to have, and they're okay with the secondhand cannabis smoke. And then they can wear masks, and they cannot be punished for masks. If they decide to wear masks, then the employer has to provide them, pay for them. So just have masks available generally. Um, yeah, we went through a global pandemic and we have flu season every year, and people are smoking, putting things in their hands and mouths. So employees, it's up to them. And then uh, maybe you're all familiar with the injury illness prevention plan required by Cal OSHA. One of the less fun things we get to make sure happens, but very important. This is a required plan that you have to have for your business. That is like an action plan for if an injury or an illness occurs with an employee. And so it could be something like they cut their finger, and okay, well, what do we do? It's a lot about reporting the injuries as well. There's requirements of record keeping requirements for that. So when you do your required injury illness prevention plan, you are going to have to make sure that secondhand smoke information and response is included to that. So um, what is the response going to be? It's going to be wearing masks as they want. Okay, so that is the role of the Department of Cannabis Control, the state agency, in permitting events. You get your event organizer license, then you get your temporary event, and that's for standalone events, 1 day up to 4 days. And then DCC, when it comes to the lounges and cafes, it's more of a permissive approach. You're not applying with them for a license, you apply with the local government, but the DCC will uh, sign off, will be okay, will not stop an event that follows all of the rules. And with a cafe, I'm sorry, won't stop a cafe or lounge from being licensed. And then at the local level, that's where you're going to get your license, because for a cafe and lounge, that's an ongoing activity. That's, not a one-off event, and it's something that requires different types of regulations and licensing and oversight. And so that's where we get down to the city of Los Angeles. And to be clear, that we're working on it. It's a work in progress at the city level, because this is relatively new, at least with the food preparation and events. But also the DCR has been really working hard on dealing with this Los Angeles situation where we come from, the old world, the legacy world, and just all the things that were in place had to be updated and put into compliance with the state rules. So DCR has been doing a lot of work, and now it's time to get into the cafes and lounges. So the way that works is that the city council has to enact the regulations, and then the DCR can license them. So let's see. Oh, this is where we're at right now. So the city council, they have requested DCR to provide a report as well as proposed regulations on how to license cafes and lounges. So we're just in that license and regulatory development process right now. And so, just to be clear, up until this point, no event licenses were available in the city, and cafes and lounges are on their way. Now, up to this point, there you can have an event, you can get together, you can get people together, and in the city of Los Angeles, it's just making sure that if you're not licensed for a cafe or lounge, there's no consumption, there's no sales, and you're not bothering anybody. So what you can do is you can have like a cannabis celebration event where brands come and they vend, sorry, they don't vend, they have booths, and the booths are to promote their brands, and they can have merch and talk to potential customers, talk to patients, get the word out there, talk to other businesses, do B2B type of things, but no consumption, no sales, and don't be a nuisance. And then once the cafe and lounge licensing regulations are in place, then those rules will, you will be able to consume and you will be able to do sales. So this is the current rulemaking process, and you may be familiar with it. You may have already been involved because that's really your role. You got to advocate for the regulations that you want, especially in this early process. So in this instance, we have to first originate the proposal. So as I said, the city council has already requested to the DCR to come up with these proposals. And so now we're in the drafting and review part of the process. And you can have input. You can contact the DCR. You can message them on Instagram, email, and just, if you have a specific concern, or if your retail location is, maybe just right on the line of a sensitive use distance, you can contact them and say, please don't make it so broad, maybe keep it the same as it is, 600 feet at the state level, or whatever the current city regulations are. So you can have input, and you need to get involved. And then once the draft is available, there's public notice, and then a public hearing, and then public comment. So you can submit public comment officially. This is for the hearing. Again, you can always contact your city council member. You can contact the DCR to give input, but for the hearing, there is a specific process for public comment, and that can lead to changes. Public comment often leads to changes. In cannabis, we often go through multiple drafts of proposed regulations, and public comment has a very large impact on that. So even if you haven't yet contacted your city council member, it's not too late to do public comment, and then that's critical. And then once we get through that process, the final regulations are going to go to the city council, and then they will vote on it. So again, you need to contact your council member and tell them to vote yes. And then it will become part of the municipal code, and there will be the licensing process. And many of you are familiar with the licensing process. And so, they're going to create the rules, they're going to create the application. Once they have the application in place, you're going to get all your materials together, and then you're going to submit it and wait for review, and probably respond to requests for additional information. And then once you do get approved, whatever restrictions you got to make sure you comply with, and all the operating requirements, because for your lounge or cafe, it's an ongoing thing. So every day you got to make sure what you're doing follows the rules. And so once you have your license, and you're operating and you're following all the rules, just have fun. Take your cafe and your lounge, become have host community events, have all the things that we've been waiting for in the cannabis industry: art, music, community, and food, and just follow the rules and keep your license and don't get into any trouble. So as far as your social equity resources and all of what is available from the city through the equity programs, check out the learning management system. That's got all the information from all the webinars, all the classes, and then there will be a future webinar to go over the draft rules for cafes and lounges. Um, and the timing right now is looking for a draft. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's looking towards the end of the summer, which is tomorrow. So pay attention. All right, and so now we are going to switch to our moderated Q&A. I believe Dale is going to be leading this part for us.
Yes, and we have had a really lovely and lively chat. So if you still have questions bubbling right now is the time to go ahead and type them in to the Q&A. And I'll also invite DCR if you want to jump in. I see that there may be some representatives that can discuss this. Uh, the biggest question right now is if the initial draft should be out in July, when to anticipate the timeliness for actual adoption to take place, and the ability to apply for an event license to be available. So if anyone has a better crystal ball than we do, and knowing that the rulemaking process might go back and forth. What I would also like to address is where success and failures have occurred in other markets that have tried this before. So that as you're ideating, as you're strategizing, and also as you're commenting on the public process, because it seems what success or failure really is going to happen at the local level. And your input on this rulemaking process is going to be crucial. Can you speak to that at all, Lauren?
I don't know the magic ball dates. I would defer to the DCR on that. Um, and I would just say, look at your situation, what you need for cafes and lounges to be able to work in your retail location, and then advocate for what's going to work for you. Also, get involved with the other licensees. We have a lot of networking in the cannabis industry, and of course working together is better, even though it may be business competition. There's no competition if you can't do it at all. So work together with the cannabis community, and also your neighbors, because this is going to be a big change to your business use. So neighbors are the ones that are going to come out in public comment against the licensing potentially, and contacting their city council people to vote against it. So you can head that off with just talking to them and letting them know how you're going to be um, managing everything, and how it won't be a problem, actually be hopefully a benefit to the neighboring businesses. So just a lot of legwork, knowing what you want out of the regulations, and getting it.
Are you aware of any other California cities that are already regulating social consumption as far as how those are being written in comparison, or specific recommendations? I keep thinking about
So
Southern California and Las Vegas, some of the lessons learned. Uh,
1775 is new, so the food and hosting events part of that. There's, all the cities are in the same boat with getting everything started now. But yes, there are cities, um, Oakland, San Francisco. I'm not as familiar with Southern California. Las Vegas, been there. Um, my recommendations for you is just figure out what works for your community. Ask your retail customers what they want, because it's every community is just different. Even just the layout of cities and in neighborhoods are different, and people, our weather is different. We don't go outside much here in the Bay Area. Southern California, enjoy the sunshine and the warmth, and so the regulations are going to be different. And yeah, I would say you can look to the other cities for models, but just like it's a little bit more different than retail or cultivation, where this is going to be an active ongoing activity with lots of variables. So just depending on what's best for the city, and a lot of factors like that.
and I think you're bringing up a really important point of what your local community, which you know best, not just your customers, but also your neighbors. What is wanted and what will be tolerated, and looking to the hospitality type outlets in that neighborhood can point you towards what you can accomplish. And if you're in the type of neighborhood where it's you know this is specifically why so many cannabis businesses located themselves in industrial parks, is because there were no neighbors to complain. The problem, of course, then is there's also no foot traffic and no public transportation there either. So finding those balances, and the number one always and forever rule about just being a good neighbor: don't be a nuisance. Rule number one: don't be a nuisance.
Yes. And for those of us in the legal cannabis industry, the license side of things, we can handle that. We're used to that, being good neighbors, and so um, I would think also just things like music volume. That's a new added element to cafes and lounges that wasn't an issue before. But with sound, I work with clients that do throw festivals and events and concerts, and sound is always one of the biggest issues. So um, just be a good neighbor and for your cafe or lounge. And when it comes to the larger events, just um understand that you're going to be responsible for everything. And so the people that you work with, the vendors, the brands that you bring in, you want, they need to be on their game too, because they could get you in trouble. So same thing with events. They're usually going to be at venues where events are normally held, so not such an issue with the neighbors, or what's going to happen with foot traffic or people loitering outside and disturbing the community. But there are going to be other concerns like parking and traffic. And yeah, is public transportation available? So you got to take those things into consideration, because those are the types of things that the local government is going to focus on, and whether or not they want to approve your event and what they're going to require for cafes and lounges.
Indeed. And as folks continue planning, an anonymous attendee wants to clarify to make sure they're on the right track. When it comes to retail licenses, applying for consumption lounges, do you know if any additional licenses will need to be obtained? Or are we confident that the current retail license alone will cover the application eligibility process for a lounge as well? And this is leading exactly to anticipating the extra steps early if needed.
There will be, like I said, the city is going to be implementing county requirements, so like food health and safety requirements. You probably have to get a permit. We'll have to get a permit from the environmental department and health, or the county health, through the city county health department permit that is required for all food businesses of this kind. And I don't know, the DCR may come up with a different uh, uh, just like how the DCC has event organizer and temporary events, the city may decide to bifurcate things like that as well. Or it may just have different types of cafe lounges licensing. So maybe just limiting what the activities are. Um, I would ask the DCR to say if they are envisioning any additional cannabis license requirements for operating a cafe or lounge. And then at the DCC level, remember they defer to the local government. You follow the rules, but the license is going to come from the local government.
And just keep in mind, if you are serving food or creating food or selling food or beverage, anything that's consumable, that is going to be regulated by the county health department. And you are inviting the need for additional licenses or additional um, inspections, because it's not the cannabis that's going to make someone sick. It's more likely to be improperly handled food. And so, yes, you will, if you're planning on doing that. There are different um, types of licenses, like packaged food versus you are making food. A taco truck has a different license than a taco restaurant, for instance. So there you are going to need to ensure that you are researching anything to do with humans consuming anything other than cannabis.
And part of what they look at is your equipment and your setup. So, proper food storage, refrigeration equipment, but also the cleaning areas and um, water heaters. These things are actually pretty heavily regulated. They have to be commercial equipment that's certified in certain ways. You can't just, get a sink and put it in. So, all of that's going to be part of your planning and preparation for getting your cafe and lounge set up. You just have to have the space for these facilities. And so, again, this is not specific to cannabis, it's just general food, health and safety requirements. So, all of your equipment, and equipment could include even the types of utensils that you use, types of mixers and things like that. So,
Right.
you
You
keep the
cannot
food
use a
preparation
microwave.
simple. Yeah, yeah. If you keep food
Yeah, it has to be
preparation
industrial.
simple,
Yep.
yeah.
We do have a couple of other questions here. And what I also discovered is LADCR is hosting a webinar right around the corner on May 13th, where Jason Colleen will be discussing LA specific regulatory approaches, concerns, Q&A. So I see you, Luis, in asking about social equity exclusivity and potential criteria around the LA Municipal Code and whether or not social equity uh, participants will get first dibs on these particular opportunities. Just take a pause and see if
That sounds
DC.
reasonable to me. That's something y'all should advocate for as the regulations are being developed is some sort of exclusivity or priority or just other benefits for social equity applicants.
And that also leads me to another anonymous attendee, autonomous, I'm sure also has space in their retail for a lounge. And so another question coming at you, DCR, will be about changing the sensitive use location requirements for lounges and what is the process going to be for conditional use permits or how to be allowed to do that with the sensitive use location issues.
That's a good question is if the city is going to use the conditional use permitting process or if it's just going to be a straightforward cannabis application license. CUP can sometimes be more flexible, but also flexibility could be worked into the DCR regulations. I would hope that there's no increase in the distance requirements because then if you're already licensed for retail, your spot is going to be appropriate for that use. But again, that's for you to advocate for, and it may end up being on a case by case basis.
Well, that concludes the questions in the queue. And with that, I would want to remind everyone that you can still get professional business coaches. These are dedicated consultants dedicated to helping your business succeed and help planning for this. You will find today's amazing expert, Miss Lauren Vasquez, as one of these amazing coaches. So you can go claim your time slot with Lauren to keep having this conversation and get ready for what's coming. There are additional phenomenal experts on this coaching list who really
If you
care and are here
if you
to
sign
help.
up today for I do Wednesdays, so you gotta make your reservation at least 24 hours ahead of time. So if you make that reservation by tomorrow at this time, you will get and sit and chat with me on Wednesday afternoon. I'd be more than happy to do that with you.
Yeah, sign up today. Follow that link that I dropped in chat today. And in addition to Lauren, there are several different types of experts as well. Some that'll help you with finance or accounting, taxes, just get you through these tough times, get you to the next level. Speaking of the next level is the next webinar on May 6th entitled Planning for the Future of Cannabis Commerce. This is designed to help get ready for the World Cup next year, June, July 2026, the Olympics in the summer of 2028, and the always looming, inevitable someday of interstate commerce. So, this webinar recording will soon be available on DCR's website, cannabis.lacity.org. And if you have any questions about accessing your LMS account, please email dcr.sep@lacity.org. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this informative webinar offered by the City of Los Angeles, thanks to the Department of Cannabis Regulations Social Equity Program. Please also help me with a warm thank you to the amazing Miss Lauren Vasquez, a cannabis attorney in this space.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
And I am Dale Sky Jones with Oaksterdam. We are so grateful to you for attending today. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.